I'd like to go with the sway, you know, and the colors are more spectacular. That's when they're breeding.
One reason we need to
Thank you very much, Sandra. That was beautiful. Good morning and welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm your worship associate today. My name is Yetta Jager. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to all of you, those of you that are here in the room, and those of you joining us virtually now and in the future. We all bring different perspectives. We come from different religious backgrounds, different places. We have different genders and races. Please join in a spirit of curiosity to learn about the different values and perspectives and beliefs and spiritual paths among us. Please stay after the service for coffee and conversation over here. And if you're new, we invite you to explore the materials that are on the windowsill over there. We have some announcements that are in your order of service that I'd like to bring to your attention. First, on the first Sundays following potluck, there will be spiritual discussions. Building Our Own Theologies is a curriculum that the UUA has developed. And so in fall, we will be focusing on exploring our faith journeys, which may or may not involve deism. There's also an anti-racism and diversity adult RE course going on, diversity, equity, inclusion, and that will be on Sunday the 27th of October, November the 10th, and the 24th, and also into December. There's a book, Do the Work, an anti-racist activity book by Kamal Bell and Kate Schatz, and we will be exploring our own abilities to develop an anti-racist framework as individuals. And there are, to sign up for that, you can see the QR code in your order of service or in the back of the room, and there's sign-up sheets there. In addition, Elizabeth Corbett, can you raise your hand? We'll be holding a table over here to encourage people to vote, and you can help by signing some cards there. So now we will settle into our worship by ringing or inviting the Tibetan bowl to sing.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all this morning. If I haven't met you yet, I am Reverend Carol Bodeau. I am privileged to serve here as minister. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I wanted to give a special welcome to those who are visiting us or attending this morning virtually. We always remind ourselves that our community is bigger than what's happening in this room right at this moment. The boundaries of our community extend out in time and space beyond what we maybe remember. So welcome to everyone who is with us in this moment virtually and also who might be with us in the future. Today we are going to be talking about all the new statements of values that our denomination is promoting. And there will be visual aids. I'm wearing the shirt. There will be cups at coffee hour. But I just want to invite you, as I invite the bowl to sound, to ask yourself, why in the world did you show up here? What is it that's a value for you that motivates you to be present here in this community? And as you do that, I invite you to think about how that might fit in, as we talk in a few minutes, with the values of the larger denomination. So I'm going to invite the bowl to sound, invite you to take a couple deep breaths and just become present.
And for our chalice lighting, I have two readings that relate to our new emphasis on action and not just words. From the 1 Corinthians in the Bible, if I speak the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. And here's another version. As we weave the tapestry of life, our words dissolve like gossamer threads, while patterns are left by our actions. We will also light community candles, both for sorrows and celebrations. We light the first candle to celebrate new hope and an end to divisiveness. We also light a candle of concern for refugees and those that are affected by war around the world.
So we're going to sing a song. We don't always make you do this, but today we're going to give it a shot because participatory action is a key theme of how we get things done. So that Teal hymnal that's sitting there, number 1017 in it, and it's about choosing to take actions to build a new world. Now, if you are a brave choir member, please come stand in front to embolden the congregation. Come on, be brave. You got to get out there if you're going to make a difference, right? Anybody else who feels brave enough singing it who wants to come stand with the choir? Come on, Craig. Craig was dodging. Yeah. All right. So let's stand up just to get our bodies moving. Okay? So you're only going to hear a couple bars of music. Follow their lips. You'll know when to start, okay? Judy, I love your brave whooping at the end. That was awesome. That was the UU spirit right there, people. That was it. So, okay, does anybody in this room feel like right now in your life you are building a new way?
Yes.
Awesome. That is awesome. Some of us might be feeling like that in our personal lives, in our families, in our work, maybe in our play, maybe in the way we play. Or perhaps you're a person who would like to build a new way, who would like to build a new way for yourself or for our culture, for our planet. I know that I personally am one of those people who's kind of a change junkie. Like, I'm one of those people who thrives on transformation and improvement and making things better all the time. I like to constantly be looking for ways to shift or adapt. So one of the things I always do when I am in that mood is I clean closets. Can I get a yeah for that? Anybody else a closet cleaner? Yeah, yep. You're like, I feel stuck. Stuff feels stuck. I need to clean the closet. Or what we call in my household the things that rattle drawer in the kitchen. Everybody know the things that rattle drawer? It's the toothpicks. Last week I went in the things that rattle drawer and I found skewers, like those wooden skewers that you use to make kebabs. I found them in there and they were so old that they were all green with mildew. Like, it was time for a change. It was time for a change. So sometimes we have small ways that we do things to make changes, to make us feel like we're having a fresh start, like we're building something new. Sometimes those ways are bigger, but there's something exhilarating about that feeling of the possibility of making things new and building things better. The feeling that we could make a change for the better helps us feel those things that the song names: stronger, more free, makes us feel more peaceful in some ways, and yet exhilarated. And yet, I also frequently have the niggling fear that change is not really possible, that it's all just so much arm waving. That if you look at the course of human history, things are very much the same over long periods of time. So sometimes I'm not convinced by my closet cleaning or my drawer cleaning. Sometimes I get kind of downhearted and feel like maybe it's not as hopeful as I'd like it to be. Those are the moments when I tell myself that real change, actual change, is frequently slow and incremental, not fast and dramatic. Right? Kind of like the seasons changing. They don't change quickly. There are things that we notice that tell us they're changing, and every once in a while there's something like a snowfall that makes it look dramatic. But mostly change happens in little ways. So recently, I know that many of you have heard me go on and on about the changes happening in our denomination, right? That there are changes happening in the ways Unitarian Universalism thinks about things and the way we want to proceed as a group. So those changes are proclaimed in some changes to the bylaws of our denomination. Usually, I do not spend time talking about bylaws because people glaze over. But these are actually really interesting changes because the bylaws are the place where the denomination says, this is what we think is important, and here's how we're going to do it. So you've heard me talk about them a little bit. I'm going to talk about them again. And some of you have expressed a little bit of doubt and niggling suspicion about how realistic these changes actually are. Like, are they even possible? Because they are quite big. So I'm going to tell you about them. Here is the newly stated purpose of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Here's what we say our whole point in existing is. See if this matches up with why you're in the room. All right. Section C 2.1 of our bylaws, newly adopted. The Unitarian Universalist Association will devote its resources to and use its powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. Is anybody getting kind of glazing over yet? Like, just ask yourself, have you glazed over yet? It'll get better. Okay. This is where it gets interesting. The primary purpose is to assist congregations in vital ministries, okay? To support and train leaders, both lay and professional. To foster lifelong faith formation and spiritual development. Try not to glaze over too much as I read this. Here's where it gets interesting. To heal historic injuries. To support and encourage the creation of new Unitarian Universalist communities, and to advance our UU values in the world. Those all seem pretty, like, healing historic injustices is a little bit spicy, but this is where it's really interesting. The Unitarian Universalist Association will actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love. And okay, now many of those goals seem like, yeah, of course we'll do that. They seem pretty reasonable. Assisting congregations, training leaders, fostering faith formation, supporting new congregations, advancing UU values. Is anybody hearing Charlie Brown yet? Wah, 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 right? Those are just assumptions. We kind of like are going to have those as baseline. Here's where things get interesting. Those seem right-sized to most of us, but there are some big statements in there which seem a little bit more challenging. So, healing historic injuries, what does that even mean? And the real doozy, actively engaging in the transformation of the world through liberating love. That is a really big ask. Okay? It is a tall order, and it is a very clear change of expectations, explicit expectations and declarations of what we're going to do. Now, I want to make a really important clarifying statement here. The assumption has been there all along, not explicitly stated, that we would change the world. I mean, how many of you who have been in the denomination longer would say that that is, like, you can just nod your head. That's kind of in there, right? That's been in there. We're going to make changes that impact the world. We have impacted the world. Unitarian Universalism as a tradition has transformed things in the world. There are countless stories that we can tell, and we do tell, about how Unitarians and Universalists and Unitarian Universalists have individually and collectively transformed the world through all kinds of courageous and outrageous and determined and audacious actions, right? All you have to do is Google famous UUs, and you will get a long list of people who did all kinds of incredible things. Presidents and, you know, the people who started, Clara Barton, who started all kinds of service agencies, and people who started the Humane Society, and Thomas Jefferson, and right, you're going to get a long list of people. So we sort of have this assumption that we have the possibility of changing the world. But here's what's different. We've never said before that we expect it. We've never said before, if you come into this community, we expect you to engage in world-changing activities. And that explicit change, it gets even stronger in the next section of the bylaws. Again, no glazing over. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant. Now, a covenant isn't a contract. It means we take it to heart. We promise from our hearts, congregation to congregation through our association, to help one another in our ministries. We draw from the heritage of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, and build on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. This is new. We have never said anything this mushy out loud before. Okay? That's new. That's a new statement. We've never gone out and just outright said, it is our job to love one another. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. I invite you to take a minute to get your brain around that. What does that mean for you? We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our values through the spiritual discipline of love. So I want you to imagine what it would be like for you to hold someone else accountable in this room to live our values. And ask you how that makes you feel. Anybody feel a little squirmy at that? Very squirmy. Yep. Or how about being the person who's being held accountable? Squirmy? New church. So we're going to get to talk about the sharing of opinions. That's part of it. So the catch there, Judy, is through the spiritual discipline of love. Love is the catch. Love is the glue. Because we are used to accountability meaning judgment. We are used to accountability meaning shaming. We're used to accountability meaning blame and criticism. And this isn't that. This is something very different. Okay? So I invite you, as Yetta said when she welcomed us, to open into a spirit of curiosity. Invite a spirit of curiosity and open-mindedness. So I'm going to go through some examples here. I'll use myself as the example so that we can see what this might look like. Those central words are love and accountability. Love by its very nature is relational. It is meant to be relational. To be loving requires being in a kind of mutuality and relationship. And accountability is actually inherently relational too. We make a covenant, a heartfelt promise to be relational with each other. So in other words, if I do or say something that doesn't match our values, you can lovingly hold me accountable to that. Some of you are willing to do that, others of you find that harder. So the next section of the bylaws tells us exactly what the values are that we say as Unitarian Universalists we're covenanting to live by. So I would like you to refer to, you're going to have a hard time seeing it from where you're sitting, but there will be coffee mugs. I want to refer you to the handy visual aid that Helen Rivers from our congregation and her company Blessed Be has provided here. This shirt is JETPIG. JETPIG is the either fantastic or truly unfortunate acronym that has been created to describe our new values, okay? Literally JETPIG, JETPIG, okay? You will see there's some mugs for coffee hour. You can look at it up close. JETPIG, and there are already, this only got adopted in June, and there are already songs and videos and stuffed pigs and all the things, okay? All the things to help us remember that. So these values that are named in the JETPIG narrative are the things that we now covenant as a UU congregation to uphold. So I'm going to go through each of these letters and what they stand for with examples of ways that I, as your minister and leader here, might succeed or fail to live by these values here in this context at Westside. Now, I will tell you that JETPIG is not the order they appear in the bylaws, okay? They're in a different order in the bylaws, but the order they're in the bylaws was way too hard to come up with a cool acronym, so we got JETPIG instead. All right, J. justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. Big ask. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations, our association, and society at large. Okay, justice. And this one seems tough to me. I mean, setting myself and this little church up with the task of dismantling racism and all forms of systemic oppression, that is a lot to ask of us. It seems impossible and unrealistic and overwhelming. That's where I go with that. But at the same time, I have to ask myself, if I have a heartfelt commitment to these values, how do we start? Now, we start with this democratic process thing. That's easier. That's easier than dismantling of all oppression, right? Let's start with the democratic process thing. Has anyone in the room ever caught me making a decision without using the democratic process in this institution? You can raise your hand, because you know I've done it. You're not being brave. Some of them are like, yeah, I know she did that, right? Yes, there have been times when I have said, oh, let's just do that thing. And then afterwards thought, but there were 7 people I should have asked that question before I made that decision. Sometimes I don't do it. And some of you, in some instances, have had the courage to say, and the kindness to say, you say it very nicely, Carol, you might have, next time, you might want to go through more appropriate channels to make that decision. I'm thinking of painting a room, for example. You know, Carol, next time you might want more people in on the decision of what color you're going to paint that room, right? So that's even the democratic process sometimes I fall down on. We're all going to do this. That's part of the point of loving accountability, which is different than non-loving judgment, criticism, and shame. We know that we're all going to do it. Now, the harder part of this first one, justice, is I will say that I have struggled myself to figure out how to take concrete action in this room and in this congregation on anti-racism, because I know how tough of a question it is. And fortunately, some of you have continued to push me and to push the congregation for more of that. You have tried to hold me accountable by your persistent and repeated requests, suggestions, urgings, and reminders that we need to pay more attention to this here at Westside. Again, accountability and love go together. So, some of the good things that are happening, because of that, we are starting an anti-racism class here at the end of October. And we're using resources for that class recommended by a new partner, an organization called The Bottom, which is an African-American organization in Knoxville that we are trying to commit to consistently showing up for, building a real relationship with them. We have a long way ahead of us in this work. We are not going to do perfect at this work. The whole point of this loving accountability is that we know we're not perfect. And we can only help ourselves improve and make positive changes if we're willing to name what's not working. So I'm going to invite us all to be brave about that in the coming months. All right, E, equity. We declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Now that's, again, these are big words, fully accessible. Fully, that's a big word, that's a big aspiration. And we all need to help each other with this, but I specifically need your help with this one. How is Westside inaccessible? We make assumptions about accessibility. I have a tendency to assume that what I'm saying or doing will be accessible to others because I don't necessarily stop to think, about what it feels like to be in someone else's life, or someone else's body, or someone else's experience. Now, one place where we've done a lot of work on this is that I know that many of our online participants have been incredibly helpful in reminding us about accessibility for people attending virtually. They have reminded us that they want to participate in the rituals and group activities that we do here on Sunday mornings. And we've made some progress, okay? We've learned to use the chat function on YouTube so that their voices are heard in our services. We're also going to have new speakers put up in the room soon, and we're having a new projector installed. Soon there will be a projector installed that will broadcast images and words up here on the sanctuary wall, because we're trying to make it more accessible to see lyrics for people who are more visually minded, right? We have to start to consider different neurotypes. We have to consider all different kinds of abilities and accessibility needs. And I know that we can do better with this. Here's some examples of how I know we can do better. Things that I feel kind of uncomfortable about, but don't know quite how to fix. We stand to do our closing. That is not fully accessible. We hold hands, which is not equally accessible to all neurotypes or all emotional moods on any given day. We don't always consider all abilities when we create rituals or events or gatherings. Something else that I feel really uncomfortable with that I haven't even really talked about because I'm not sure how to address it is that we often use alcohol to celebrate special events without considering how that impacts the people in our community who are in recovery. That bothers me every single time we do it. These things matter. These are ways that we can do better, or that we can at least be lovingly accountable for how we interact. Now, there's another statement later in the bylaws that emphasizes this a little bit more, and it's a statement on inclusion, and this is even more dramatic. Systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. We pledge to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. We strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcome all persons who share our values. We commit to being an association of congregations that empowers and enhances everyone's participation, especially those with historically marginalized identities. It's really comfortable to make it accessible to people who are like us. But it's a lot trickier to make ourselves and our space and our ways of being accessible to people who are different, but who may need this space. We have work to do, and each of us can play a role in helping the board and the lay leaders and me notice what needs to be addressed. It's not a place where we keep saying, well, that's just the way it is. All right, T, transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages. Never complete and never perfect. There's that never perfect part, right? We're always going to be a work in progress. So openness to change. How does that sit with you all? I know that for me, change feels really awesome when it's the changes I want, that I choose. But when the change comes from someone else's wants or needs, it's less comfortable. Some days, also, I get tired of change. How many of us feel like this world is changing really fast in ways that do not all feel awesome? There's a lot of change. So openness to change is tricky. Some days I am tired of trying to find a better way and holding myself accountable for all the things I haven't yet figured out. Many of you may have thought something like this. Well, I wish Carol would fill in the blank, or, well, that's just the way she does things. It's all right. But sometimes, some of you have been incredibly courageous in calling me in, actually, on things I need to change. And sometimes I feel overwhelmed when you do that. Sometimes I feel like, oh gosh, here's another one. Take a breath and be open to hearing the accountability. One of the fabulous online folks did that recently for me when they called me in. So to call someone in is to name with loving accountability what someone's doing that is hurtful or upsetting or disturbing. They called me in on how often I gesticulate when I talk. Right? Lots of times I want to wave my hands around, and in particular, I have a tendency to point. I've gotten a lot better at it thanks to this person. But apparently that looks a lot worse on the screen than it does in this room. So some wonderful online person sent me an email after a service and was like, "You have got to stop pointing at us." And I was like, but I meant it in a good way. And they were like, "It looks like you're scolding us. It reminds me of my mother scolding me." And they were right. And for the next few weeks, I cannot tell you how many times I caught myself pointing. It took energy to stop pointing. You will notice sometimes I will do this because I am catching myself about to point. It's tiring. Being accountable and making changes is tiring. It takes energy. When others call us in lovingly and respectfully, when they ask us to see how something we said or did impacted them, here's what's happening. We're giving them an opportunity and us an opportunity to remember that we're connected. We will not always change our actions. There are some things that we're going to do or say that we hold as a true value, and when someone says, "I'm not comfortable with that," our response is going to be, "I'm sorry you're uncomfortable with that. This is really important to me." And we're going to keep doing it. But openness to change means being willing to hear the request and to use a little energy. One of the other ways people are constantly calling me in and asking me to transform, and I'll talk about this more in a moment, is resting more. We don't always have to hold each other accountable to do more. How many of you in this room need to be held accountable to do less? How many of us in this room need to be held accountable to stop trying to solve everything all the time? Fortunately, there are a few people here who also ask me to transform myself by saying, "You should not try to do that too, and that, and that, and that. You should back off." All right, pluralism. That's the P. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant, we promise from our hearts, to learn from one another in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and our commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. So, ask yourself this. How much of you are like, "Yeah, I want to do that. I want to embrace other people's differences." But that can get a little tricky depending on how different we're talking about. How far out into the land of difference are we willing to actually love and respect someone else? And this comes mostly in our unspoken and unnamed assumptions. we, and I'll say I, often make assumptions about what others think and feel. And more often than not, I make assumptions that people are like us instead of different than us, or we assume that they're totally different from us. If they're a little different, they must be completely different. I want you to take a minute to think about that. Think of someone you know that you assume, maybe in this room, is just like you. You assume that they think about things the way you do, that they go about things the way you do, and entertain the possibility that that's not true. Now, even trickier, think of someone that's really different than you, that you assume is really different from you in all ways. Our current election cycle is making this a very easy exercise. Okay? Now ask the question, what if they're not so different from me? What if my assumptions about these differences are not accurate? What if it's a whole lot fuzzier than that? I have learned many lessons in my years here on the subjects of politics and theology and people's personal histories and all kinds of other things, that my assumptions are frequently wrong. I tell myself, based on what I do know about someone, that I can make accurate assumptions about things I don't actually know about them. Okay? Now, so that's tricky. Pluralism, the P, is tricky because we make assumptions that we don't realize we're making. This is where accountability can be helpful. I might make a comment and someone might say, well, that's not true at all. The other place it gets tricky is the sacred part. It's easy when we're angry with someone or we disagree with them to forget to treat them as sacred. It can be hard for me to be curious about the perspective of someone if I feel threatened. Every every person who's ever been part of a UU congregation has had this challenge, right? The conflict where you feel defensive. Gray hymnal or teal, YouTube or Zoom, paper plates or plates we have to wash. I mean, anybody who's been on one of our committees knows even tiny conflicts like that lead to disagreement. We have different ways of doing things at the smallest level and also at the largest level. I can remember after an election many years ago where people were extremely upset in this room, and some of the people were not upset at all and were perfectly happy with the outcome. And one person, as I walked down the aisle, said to me, I cannot believe how anybody could be okay with the way this election turned out. This is awful. And another person said, I can't understand why anybody would be upset about this. But I guarantee you the people in the room all thought they were assuming the same things. How we handle these differences, small and large, matters more than we ever imagine. So the question we have to ask ourselves when it comes to true pluralism is this: can I ask with curiosity and really, truly deep listening what you think? Or am I already trying to prove you wrong? Am I already trying to convince you? Does pluralism mean that we're going to try to change each other, or that we're going to try to grow and change together? Now, we work on this here at Westside by cultivating compassionate communication skills and by taking time to discuss things when they come up. I have absolutely loved it when during a service someone has said, Carol, what you are saying makes no sense to me. I disagree with it. I don't understand. And then we've had a conversation about it. I love that we have multiple voices speaking on Sunday mornings and that we have lots of people shaping what happens here. I love that we have a board of trustees that actively engages in the transformation of this community towards these values. And I love that we make space for all kinds of voices, all kinds of times, and that this is something our denomination does by inviting us to collaboratively work together. So I'm going to invite Judy to come up now. Judy came to me before the service and said, I wish we'd have joys and concerns, because I got something I really want to share, and it's actually about our denomination working collaboratively. So I said, well, Judy, we're going to make space for that in the service, so come on up and tell us what you got.
My daughter, Lynn Kinsman, is in her second year as president of the board at the First Unitarian Church in Rochester, New York. She sent me an email recently, short. I will read it as it came to me. I am getting up before dawn to go to the airport. I'm traveling with staff from church and my VP to Dallas to meet the First Unitarian Church of Dallas leadership. 2 other large churches are sending folks for a leadership summit, Fort Collins, Colorado, and Atlanta, Georgia. I fly back on Thursday.
Thank you, Judy. So why is that relevant right now? Think about the differences in those congregations. Colorado, Georgia, New York, and it was in Texas, did you say, Judy?
It's in Dallas.
It's in Dallas. Think about those 4 locations. Now, even though those people are going to show up as UUs, you know they're going to have some cultural differences. There probably won't be sweet tea. Maybe there will, right? They're going to have some cultural differences. They're going to meet, and they're going to listen to each other, and they're going to learn from each other. That's pluralism. Okay, the I of JETPIG, interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. With reverence for the great web of life and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. We covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships. That's a lot. I'm checking for permission here. Hang on 1 second. Got it, okay. I was going to give you an example in this one that I wanted to ask permission of the other person in the example to use the example. So I texted them before the service to make sure it was okay. So we're talking about sustainability. We honor the interdependent web. We covenant to protect the earth and all beings from exploitation. We create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect. Caring for the earth is really important to Unitarian Universalists, right? And anybody who knows me knows it's super important to me. But I have a story to tell you that Helen has just given me permission to tell. So this week, Helen has created, one of our members, Helen Rivers, has created a website called Blessed Be. It's a business. And it's a business designed to create and promote and distribute UU bling and stuff. So this shirt, Helen created the logo and the design and offered to give me a free one so I could wear it for this service. So you can go online to Blessed Be, like B-E-E, like the bumblebee. You can go online and find Helen's site where you can buy JETPIG things and other UU things. And Helen said, hey, I'll, just go online and get yourself a shirt so you can wear it for the service. And I was like, awesome. And then I was like, but I want some mugs too, because I want mugs for coffee hour. And I just was like, yeah, I'm ordering 10 mugs, right? But I did not stop to think, you all know how much I care about the earth and sustainability. I did not stop for 1 second to think about the packaging or delivery of those mugs. I did not ask the question, wonder how they'll ship those. And they showed up with more styrofoam than I have ever seen in one place in my life. Every mug had its own styrofoam container. It was an obscene amount of styrofoam, and I was horrified, okay? And I said to Helen, We should do something about it. Is it possible? Could we? And Helen and I had this amazing conversation because we as a congregation, Helen is working on creating us some items with our logo on them, specifically for Westside, including wanting more mugs. And I was like, let's have some loving accountability here for both of us, for all of us. We agreed that if and when Westside places a larger order, and we will, we need to make sure that the packaging is sustainable and that the way those objects get to us is sustainable. So the accountable part of that was that we both said, oh, that's a problem. Neither of us got defensive. I didn't be like, well, you should have warned me. And Helen didn't say, well, this is my only option. I don't have a choice. We both were like, oh, wow, that's a thing. We need to deal with that. But it was loving. There was no shame. There was no blame. There was no beating up. There was no criticism. We just said, let's work on that together. Now, at Westside, we're currently doing all kinds of things to be accountable and work together on the environment. So you can connect with the Green Sanctuary team. But there are so many ways that you might notice in this building. And if you notice things, please speak up about them. Finally, generosity. G. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Now, we pride ourselves here on our generosity, and we embody that in many ways. But where I sometimes find it hard to live that value in the world is the hope part. Generosity is a frame of mind as much as anything else. And hope, we cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. Generosity requires having something to give, and that doesn't mean just money. It takes energy to be in relationships. It takes energy to be willing to have accountability with other people. We've got to have some gratitude and some abundance and a fullness in ourselves to be able to do that. And that means having the time and the attention to care. And this brings us back to the ways that sometimes people hold me accountable. Because I fall badly on this front. I fail badly on this front because I frequently fail badly to fill my own cup. Does this sound familiar to anyone in the room who has a hard time, or in our virtual room? How many of us find it really easy to give, do, but really hard to say, okay, I am wiped out. Sorry, I can't do that this week, or I really need help. Generosity requires that we not try to do too much at once, that we have realistic expectations of ourselves and others, that we allow time and patience for change to happen, and that when we feel ourselves flagging, when we feel that despair or that hopelessness or that overwhelm or that resignation, this is important, folks. We don't take that as a sign of actual hopelessness or actual impossibility or actual not being able to do it, but we rather take it as a sign that we need to rest for a minute and regroup and work as a team, that we need to see where others might be able to help us, and also, what would it look like to hold somebody accountable when you know that they're doing more than they should? It's easy to say, yeah, keep doing it, please. It's another thing entirely to say, I kind of think you need a vacation. And they say, but this thing's got to get done. And you say, no, it actually doesn't have to get done today. It can wait. So, loving accountability sometimes means stopping action rather than requiring things that you got to get right. To see how different that is, I want you to sit with that for a second. We think accountability means that someone's going to tell us you're not doing enough, you're doing it wrong, you need to do better, and you need to do more. That's not what this is. This is us lovingly. Loving accountability means saying, is this going well? How are we doing? Could we do this differently? What do you need? What could we do that would make everyone thrive more? That's very different. Generosity with our resources can be a lot easier than generosity, openness, curiosity, and willingness in our hearts and minds. And I think really that value, all that other stuff in JETPIG, all the justice and the equity and the transformation and the pluralism and all those values, we're not going to get anywhere on any of those without an open-hearted spirit of generosity and abundance towards ourselves and towards one another. This, to me, seems like the most important of these values, because really it's just code for kindness. It's just code for kindness. How can we be kind to ourselves and one another? How can we show kindness in ways that reach out to more people, to make our space friendlier and more kind? And if that's being hard for us, how can we be kind to ourselves and each other in trying to make those changes? I think the thing that feels most overwhelming and threatening and scary about these new changes to our bylaws is that people feel like they're going to be judged for not being good enough or not doing enough or not getting it right, and that now there's some kind of permission to be mean to each other. But that's not what this is at all. Accountability does not mean meanness. It actually means honesty and kindness and trust. It means I trust you. If you say to me, Carol, you probably could have handled that better, instead of me going to, oh no, they hate me, oh, they're judging me, well, I'm better than them anyway. Instead of going to all that defensiveness, I can go to, like, this person really cares about me. I'm going to trust that love is at the core of this accountability. I'm going to assume and trust that love and care of me and this community is what's at the basis of this. And I'm going to act as if that's true. And I'm going to receive it as if that's true. And I'm always going to try to speak in that spirit. So, I have a little exercise for us as the last thing we're going to do this morning. Generally, when we talk about, if you look at your order of service, here's your order of service. It says justice and generosity comes after the sermon. So we're going to do a little exercise. Generally, when we talk about justice and generosity on Sunday mornings, we talk about resources. And yes, I will make the statement, you may donate financially to Westside at any time. We appreciate those donations. We need them to function. You can make a donation in the box at the back of the room. You can make a donation online. You can use the QR code. There's all kinds of ways on our website and otherwise to support Westside financially. And there are always actions you can do. We are always making an effort to connect justice and generosity to the larger community. You can do volunteer tasks. You can share your opinions. You can make heartfelt connections. All right, here's what I'm going to ask you to do today. And it won't be embarrassing, and there will be no shaming. I want to ask you to do this, just inside your own self. How generous, curious, abundant, and hopeful are you feeling today? Right now, right in this moment. We talked about this at spiritual practices this morning, and some of us were feeling a little bit scared and hopeless. Right? How open are you feeling to loving accountability? How open are you feeling to be curious about possible changes? How is your spirit today? None of us is going to transform the world on an empty tank. So I want you, maybe you could do this on a 1 to 10 scale. Let's do that. Let's imagine you've got a tank. This is your generosity tank, and this is all the things. Let's take money out of the equation right now. This is your time, your energy, how much energy you have to care, your emotional willingness. You got a tank. How full is it? Are you at a 1? Are you running on fumes? Are you near empty? Are you like hanging in there in the middle? Are you feeling like, yeah, I got all kinds of energy to share? Ask yourself that question. If you feel full and fueled up and ready to go, here's the next question. Who do you know that isn't feeling full and fueled up and ready to go? Who needs you? Who needs your spirit? Who needs your heartfulness to show up? Who needs you to ask them, hey, want to talk? How are you doing? And if you are feeling more on the empty side, ask yourself this as your next question. Who can you ask for help? Who can you reach out to? What might you do to let yourself off the hook and be kind to yourself? The idea of these changing values is that we take them out of our heads and put them in our hearts. Unitarian Universalism is an extremely intellectual denomination. We like to think about things. We like to read books. We like to talk about things. We like that stuff, and that is good. We have restated our principles and purpose in a way that asks us to move it into our hearts, love, and our bodies, action. This will take some practice. This will take some time, but it is something that I believe will make us all healthier, more whole, and more powerful in the world. So, transforming the world through liberating love. That's a really big ask, but here's what I think. We talked about this in spiritual practices today. You're not going to transform the whole big world out there. Our little church isn't going to transform the whole big world out there, but we can transform this world right here. We can transform our world. We can transform how we talk to each other. We can transform how we act together. And then that transforms how the people we interact with outside this room might feel and think and behave. What if the things we practice here, then we try with our families, our neighbors? What if you encountered someone in your community this week and you thought to yourself, okay, what was that thing Carol said? Love and accountability, right? Love and accountability. What if you said to your family member or your friend who said something that was like, you didn't really agree with it, or it was really hard, or you didn't want to hear it? If you just said with loving accountability, hey, like, I really care about you, but I don't understand why you see it that way. I'm curious. What if we treated things as relational? Our worlds can change, and there's a ripple effect. By covenanting to be part of Unitarian Universalism, we are agreeing to be part of a movement of lots and lots of individuals, in lots and lots of families, in lots and lots of neighborhoods, in lots and lots of communities across this world, working together to each transform our piece of it, and together we build a new way. You don't have to go out and erase all systemic oppression, but you can work on how you participate in it in your own life. You don't have to save the whole environment, but we can order mugs in a different way, right? We can build a new way. We can be stronger. We can create more peace. We can create more freedom. We can feed the needs of a hurting world, our world, right here, which spreads and spreads and spreads. So rather than give up hope, let us practice an attitude of gratitude and hopefulness. I said to the spiritual practices, this group this morning, if you do anything this week, stop believing the lie that you are being told about your own powerlessness. That whole big media industry out there is trying to tell you that you are powerless in some way, that you're not enough, that you're not good enough, that you don't count enough, that you need to be different, that you need to be more. Stop believing that lie. Together, we build a new way by opening our hearts and our minds to what's right in front of us, and that loving accountability allows us to have the safety to make changes in a way that is hopeful and possible. So I want to encourage you during coffee hour to come up and say, but Carol, right? We will build a new way together. May it be so. Yetta has our benediction today. Now, here's what we're going to do. I want this to be incredibly accessible. So, I'm going to ask you to be brave and accountable. If you don't want to stand up to hold hands for the benediction, then don't. Walk out of the room. Go to the edge of the room. Leave early. Do whatever makes you happy. Be courageous and bold. And if you would like to stand up and if you would like to hold hands, please do so. And Yetta will give us our benediction.
Go in peace, seeking justice. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in mindless oblivion. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go without challenging yourself or others. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in utter ease and comfort. When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace seeking justice. I mean go in peace committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. When I say go in peace, I mean go in the peace that is created when together we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. Go in peace. That's by Jim McGaugh.